One smart Alec sent me a question direct to the iPad, and I think he was talking about you, Ram, but he was probably talking about me. And the question simply is, what's your name again? I've already forgotten. Thank you very much. Ram, that was great. Truly innovative thinking. You've handed us the keys to business success. You've given us ideas about the future, and you did it all on a retro overhead projector. Hats off to you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. All right. We're going to move into a little discussion on the stage now, leading us up to our first networking/coffee break. Our next guest has over 15 years digital marketing and e-commerce experience, including roles at Airgas, where he is now, carparts.com, and Intuit. He's now one of the leaders of e-business initiatives at Airgas. He has been through the strategy crafting process. So now to share some innovative ideas, best practice stories, and what to do, and more importantly, what not to do. Please welcome e-business marketing director from Airgas, Steve Max.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, have a seat over
Thank you.
here. All right. My goodness, we're bombarding this audience with ideas and with insight. And what I want to do now is really just find out a bit more about you and about your organization. So maybe just turn to the audience and tell them a bit about yourself.
So as was mentioned, I've been with Airgas for 12 years. I'm one of the leaders of the eBusiness program. About 2 years ago, we started a process to redeploy our eBusiness platform, and my role in that is wholly focused on getting our new platform up and going with a target go live of sometime next year.
And there's been quite the evolution at Airgas. Tell us about the web channel itself and how it's evolved over time.
Sure.
And I know you brought some slides with you as well.
Let me tell you a little bit about Airgas first. So Airgas is a $5 billion company. Some unique things about Airgas that have driven our culture and really play into the development of our e-commerce program are that we've done over 400 acquisitions. So when you are trying to do a lot of acquisitions and merging computer systems, people, and processes, that doesn't lend itself to a lot of standardization, and that can make e-commerce hard. But to help understand the uniqueness of the business, as you can read some of the background, we have about 1,100 branches. We have one of the largest truck fleets in the country. The products we sell, packaged gases or gases in the cylinders. You've probably seen some of our trucks on the road. Those generally have a delivery radius of about 50 miles from the branch that services the customers. So our products can't be UPS'd, can't be put on planes. So that's why we have all these branches across the country. There's also a lot of regulations and hazards related to gases which come into play in developing an e-commerce program.
So this is an organization with great history, and I guess there was a point where no one could have imagined you'd be selling gas online. So there has been a real evolution at the organization. I'm fascinated to know how you went from what it was before to what it is now. And of course, I have a ton of questions for you as well.
Sure. So you have to sort of understand the customer base. It's very, very diverse, as you can see. We have guys who are very blue-collar welders, to PhDs in chemistry, to doctors, to firemen, to supply chain professionals. Many of our largest suppliers are here in the audience today, and many of our customers are here in the audience today. So we're trying to serve a diverse mix of customers. And that's created challenges in understanding what we want to do with eBusiness. And to give you a little background on the site and in the history, and I put this together and I thought it was fascinating. We launched our first site in 1997, and you can see we redid it again in 98, and it was pretty much brochureware. In 2001, we launched our first e-commerce site, b2b.airgas.com, but it wasn't the main corporate site, www.airgas.com. And I think in B2B and a lot of markets, people struggle with, well, how does e-commerce fit into the overall corporate brand, into that main site? And so we stuck with this approach for a few years. But then in 2004, we started getting the idea we really need to switch over to an entire e-commerce focus. And up until that point, our e-commerce program wasn't really growing very fast. And we lost a lot of enthusiasm in the organization to support it because we weren't putting up the growth numbers. We took it a step further in 2005, completely merged the two sites together, really drove e-commerce. We made a lot of back-end changes, system changes, and we started to see really, really good growth, 50% growth, 70% growth for several years, year after year. But as I mentioned, Airgas has done all these acquisitions, and so we have a very entrepreneurial culture. We really empower the folks in the field to do what's right for the customer, which is great, except when you have to put those processes online, it becomes very difficult because they tend to have created lots of different cultures and lots of different processes to serve unique customer needs. And so about that time, we started a process internally. Another thing I should add to that is the company ran on 2 different ERP systems, 12 instances of one of them. And so for e-commerce, we're trying to knit together all these different systems. That wasn't really going well, and it became very unscalable. So the Airgas started a process to reevaluate our ERP situation and started a conversion to SAP, which we've just completed. As we got close to the end of that, we knew it was time to refocus on eBusiness, and in 2011 we kicked off the process to figure out what our strategy should be for e-commerce. We engaged with the Acuity Group shortly after that to help us develop that process, and earlier this year we decided on the software, Hybris and Endeca, that we were going to implement, and now we've just started development of that new platform. And what you see behind us is a screenshot of our current site, because we developed the strategy and understood what a massive undertaking this was, and understanding we hadn't updated our website in several years. We just did a refresh of the site to make it look more modern, a little more mobile friendly, a little easier navigation, but no real core changes to the underlying functionality. So our customers at first loved the look of it. Oh, this is fresh, it's new, it's better. But then they were like, hey, it basically does the same stuff, and it wasn't really doing them that well to begin with. So, as I said,
so the work goes on.
The work goes on, and we will be deploying the new platform mid-next year, which is my entire focus.
Nice, and then 2 years after, you'll be putting the next new platform in. I want to take us back a little bit, because you mentioned as you were going through the process of trying to make the e-commerce side more than it was, that there was not much coming through. There was not very profitable. There must have been a bunch of resistance within the organization to investing more money into it. So at the time, and I'm thinking about people in the audience who maybe have a bit of a brick wall up at the C-suite, how did you sell the fact that this was the future and this was where you had to invest time and resources?
Yeah, so we were very lucky that our senior management was very supportive of the initiative. They saw the changes going on in the marketplace. We'd always known that our ERP was encumbering our growth, and the plan was always to develop the program. But then we told them how much money it was going to cost, and so that's where the questions start to come in. Well, what exactly are we going to get? And so we developed, with the assistance of the Acuity Group, a pretty robust presentation for our board. We socialized it throughout the organization. We had an eBusiness steering committee, which consisted of executives from core functional areas of our leadership team: IT, operations, customer service, product management, sales. So everybody in the organization, each part of the organization was contributing to what the strategy should be and what do we want to get out of this.
So you harnessed your organization's ideas. You went to the people to say, be part of this internal sell.
Yeah.
So in the end, everyone was part of something that really you were trying to sell back to them as a whole.
Yeah, a big part of the message was that e-commerce cannot be done in a silo. We cannot have the e-commerce group. This must be a true omni-channel, multi-channel experience.
Yeah.
And it's got to affect the whole organization.
That's a very smart approach, and I'm always a big believer. I work with many IT organizations, and I think very often the conversation between the IT function and the business function, sometimes it clashes. You have to find the translation, and clearly that's what you actually did. You were here in the presentation that was just given by Ram. He talked about the key questions that need to be asked. Did any of those resonate with you?
Yeah, so one of the points was about who are the people willing to embrace the change, and that really rang true with us, because certainly in our organization and the nature of a B2B industrial company, a lot of people doing things the same way they've been doing for years, We're one of those companies who is the number 1 or 2 players out there. We feel we have some pretty big defensive walls. We have over 1 million of these cylinders out there. It's pretty hard to replace those or go out and buy them and take us out of the market. It's hard to go out and build air separation plants to fill the gas tanks. It's pretty hard to find the welding experts who can tell customers how to weld stuff. But what it's maybe not too hard to do is understand what our customers' needs are. And so when we go out and talk to the field, we don't talk so much about the functionality of the site. We talk about how we're going to make it easier to serve their customers and not really disrupt what they're doing.
Right.
A big part of the message that we try to communicate, and one of the guiding principles I have in product management, is whatever we're doing online can't be too radically different than from what we're doing offline, and it can't be a special handling or a disruptive process to what the guy in the branch does every day. Because when we talk about only 2, 3, 4% of sales going through a channel, if a guy in a branch in the middle of North Dakota gets an e-commerce order every 3 weeks right now, and it requires him to stop what he's normally doing and rethink what he needs to do, he's not going to be a supporter of it. So we try to align with what they're doing, make things very consistent.
Let's talk about the customers. You've mentioned them a few times, but you've been at this since 2001. How have you brought the customers along? What have you put into place to make sure that they've bought in all the way, or as much as they can do?
Yeah, so everybody's probably faced with the same problem of management wants to know revenue, how many sales are going through this channel. I often describe my job as my job is to produce a PowerPoint slide with a chart on it with an arrow going up. They only want it to be the revenue arrow. But who says that's what the customers want? Placing an order online, if you think about it, especially with us, is the highest risk transaction. If you're ordering a gas mix that's your plant is dependent on to run and the order gets lost or botched, you may not do it again. So is that the first thing to lead with? No, we try to lead with the other self-service functionality. Hey, you can look up product information, and for us there's often technical product information unique to the gas they're buying. Hey, you can pay your invoices online. One of the things that makes B2B unique and different than B2C is the importance of the procure-to-pay process. So don't focus all on ordering. Your customers may not care about ordering. That may be a convenience to them. Focus on what do they want, which is a seamless procure-to-pay process, and how do you help them with that?
But the ordering has to be a key target for you.
It's a key target. You can't get away.
Right.
Can't go away from the chart with revenue.
And if you think about all of us in the room, how much of our job in convincing the customers that this is the way that we're now going to operate, how much of that job is being done for us by the B2C trailblazers?
Yeah, so B2C certainly sets our users' expectations on how the site should work. We can talk about how our industry is unique, B2B is unique, the procure-to-pay process is unique, but anytime we go and talk to customers, can it just be like Amazon? Can it just be like Best Buy?
Last time you bought this giant cylinder, maybe you'd like another one.
Would you like some oxygen with that?
Very good. So B2C is helping us. By the way, you can ask questions to Steve. The system still applies. It is the text number you send the question to is 22333. And just make sure you pre-see your question with that 6-digit code. I'll remind you what it is. It's up on the screen, 5904008. As long as you put that code in first, then your question, I will see it on my iPad, and I'll try to get through as many as possible. Okay, back to the questions then. You're on a journey, and it's obviously producing results. You're doing this very well. How do you now value the e-commerce side of the business when you look at the holistic business? How do you value it in terms of what you say to the C-suite, and how do you value it when you talk to your partners around the country and customers? Yeah,
so the message first, to get real support for this, and I think I mentioned Airgas is a really bottom-up driven company, not a top-down driven company. It's great the executives want to do this. They really have no say whether it's going to work or not. We cannot dictate to our sales guys, you have to put customers on, can't dictate to our branch guys, you have to talk to your customers about it. We empower those folks closest to the customer to make the right decision. So what's important to them is often going to be different than what's important to our executives.
Right.
Executives really want to see those revenue metrics, profitability. But the guy in the branch really wants to know, hey, this is going to make it easier for me to deal with my customers. It's going to take headaches away. And that goes back to, I can't develop an online process. It's going to conflict with what he's doing 98%, 95% of the time. So when we talk to those folks and get their support, we drive that message home. It's going to make your life easier. Another key thing is, who are the champions in the field? And so you're going to have people who resist. They've been doing it a long time. They have very, very deep relationships with the customers. This is something makes us different than B2C. The sales force, with those deep personal relationships, they don't want to be disintermediated.
So they will naturally push back because they can see this as a threat to their livelihood.
Yes.
And you get that kind of that feeling of the saboteurs and the Luddites and people that want to stop the progress, but it is happening, it is a wave. How do we then, this is a question for all of us, how do we win over those disenfranchised sales people? How do we convince them that this actually is the right approach and that they do have a future and it looks very good?
Yes, so we spend a lot of time. I say 50%. What are the levers we have to pull to grow e-commerce? And I say 50% of it's engagement with the field. Yeah. And it really boils down to a lot of talking to them, a lot of going out into the field, really identify your champions. Who are the folks you have a green light with? Who are the yellow, maybe not quite convinced? And who are the red, who just aren't coming along for the ride quite yet? And you have to identify the green guys and get them exposed to the rest of the guys to bring them along.
And it's important to have those influencers on board.
You have to have those influencers because I can tell you from experience, when the B2B guy goes in front of a room of our sales folks and starts talking about how great it is, it's just another guy from corporate talking. But when it's one of their top sales guys that they interact with on a regular basis, who might work in the branch next to them, talking about the customers they've won or how it's helped them solve a problem, you have a lot more credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about the product specialists. In many ways are your salespeople. They add so much value to the transaction. How do we translate that value to e-commerce? But prior to that question, just remind me that that's the one I want to ask. Let's go to some of your questions. Thank you very much for these. They are flooding in to my iPad. Steve, did you go around distribution and sell direct? And this is obviously a theme that a lot of people want to talk about.
No. We fully involve our salespeople from day one. They've gotten credit for e-commerce orders. Our orders have always gone directly to the same branch or same location that regularly services the customer. So we've tried to be, true omni-channel, multi-channel from day one. And that's certainly presented some challenges. Again, if you're only getting an order once in a while, especially in the early days, makes it difficult, but I think long-term you have to go that way.
Keep them on board, very important.
Because even though they've always gotten a commission, we still get the questions, yeah, but I'm not going to get sales credit for that. We've gotten sales credit for the last 12 years, nothing's changing.
Why do we stop it now? But if it's a concern, it's something that needs to be communicated, and to an extent you can get very smart and start to preempt these very basic concerns by constantly communicating out, this is how it's going to work.
Yep.
More questions for you. This one makes quite the assumption. How much over budget is your replatforming initiative?
I am not signing the invoices, but it leads to a great point about a project like this. It's scope creep, and you've got to manage it. And so right now we're at the point of we're starting development this week. And I continue to learn that we designed something incorrectly, or it's not doing what somebody wants it to do. And so this is when you risk getting over budget, missing your go live, and to a very important part that Ram spoke to is showing the tactical execution that Wall Street and your senior management requires for them to continue endorsing the project.
But that is your front door, and the refresh is no longer going to be a surprise to anyone in the business. It's going to happen every 18 months, every 2 years, whatever it might be. You have a diverse segmentation of customers is the next question. Are you trying to develop e-commerce with all of them, or are you focusing only on certain segments?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's one we struggle with a lot. So certainly, pretty much any of our customers can use e-commerce. One thing to understand about the business is that not all of the orders can be put through e-commerce. We do a lot of automatic delivery. We sell bulk gases where we just go out and fill up your tanks for you. So it's not all about that, so those customers are excluded. But certainly we've identified certain segments that are more apt to use e-commerce than others, and we're trying to target them. One of the struggles we have is finding industry information that helps us make that decision.
Well, what do you mean by that?
So it's hard to go find a study or an article that says, hey, B2B guys, you should be focusing here, not over here.
Now, those studies are going to come. Is it just too early in the cycle?
I guess so. I haven't found any. I'd be happy to get any data anybody has.
All right, that's a great idea. One more question from the floor, and I'll go back to mine, but I will keep welcoming questions from you, of course. You mentioned 3 to 4% of sales coming through e-commerce. The question is that an industry benchmark target?
So our actual target's much higher than that for this.
So.
Much higher as part of this initiative. But I do go back to the point of if you're always talking about that revenue, sales penetration through e-commerce, you're probably missing the big value proposition, which is all the other customer self-service activities that can be done online. And again, I'll go back to that whole procure-to-pay process, which is super important. We see more of our customers going online to manage their invoice payment.
And they become comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are your competitors up to speed with you? Are they behind you or any ahead?
No comment.
No comment. All right. That says so much, doesn't it? Okay. My next question is what I started asking before. It's about the specialists. You have a real value within the organization because people know their stuff. How do you go about translating specialization into a web and e-commerce experience?
That's a great question. And in the strategy development, one of the questions was, what's Airgas's value proposition? And we struggled with that a little bit, and then we realized it's that we have all these experts out in the field, welding efficiency specialists. Everybody's might have seen that show, Orange County Choppers, the guys with the motorcycles. Yeah, well, one of our guys taught them how to weld. We have guys who make specialty gas mixes who are in clean labs, who have PhDs in chemistry, mixing gases for secret formulas that I'd have to kill you if you found out about, kind of thing.
Very Breaking Bad, yeah.
Hopefully not. Not to go on a tangent, but once they did capture an image of one of our trucks in the background, and our PR guy not
Seriously.
like that.
That's great.
But yeah, so how do we capture that knowledge and either use online to connect customers to that knowledge pool or directly put that knowledge online?
And I guess the basic is the FAQ, right? This is what we know, FAQ. This is what you might ask, put it together, but it has to be more than that.
Yeah, and I think the evolution of that, people use the term social media, which I don't really like in B2B, but over time I think it's the online collaboration that needs to happen between our process experts and their customers.
Right.
And so one of the benefits we've derived out of this project is we really identified that we don't have the organization to extract that expertise. So one of the offshoots of the project was that we've actually started to stand up a marketing organization to go out and get that input to drive what information should be out there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You've also, I'm guessing, you've had to draft in a fair amount of talent, IT and tech talent, to run what is almost an ever-changing, almost a new business for you.
Yeah, so talent acquisition's been our biggest problem. And since probably the first week we had engaged Acuity group, they started saying, you need to hire people, you need to hire people, you need to hire people. We didn't really start hiring people. And the team's very limited. In fact, I'm the sole person in the existing e-commerce organization that works on the project. We've pulled in other people from different parts of the organization to help, but our staffing was lean. We tried to go out and do some recruiting on our own. We found we didn't really quite know what we were doing, didn't attract the right talent. So we've done this unique partnership with the Acuity group where we've taken our existing e-commerce team and merged them in the same location with full-time folks from the Acuity group.
Wow.
And the benefit of that, we feel, is that we've got an existing group of people, albeit small, who know Airgas, know our systems, know our processes, know our products, but maybe they're a little tied to, but this is the way we always do it. And we've infused them with a new group of people who are thinking outside of the box and getting us to push our limits a little bit.
Very nice, thank you. More questions from you. Don't forget, the number is 22333 and the code 590408. What other effects has your development of your e-commerce channel had on the rest of the company? Has it changed the way the organization thinks? Very deep question.
Yeah, so I mentioned we identified that we had a real need for a marketing organization and started to stand that up. And it's also caused several initiatives to change overall business practices in some areas. For instance, the process to onboard customers a little faster.
Okay.
And so this is one of the challenges with the initiative is one of our going in philosophies and strategies for the first part of it was we've got to get on the new platform first and then really enhance it, and really didn't want to change a whole lot because we worried about that causing scope creep. But at the same time, we've identified this as an opportunity, as a great hammer to say to people, hey, we've got to fix this broken process. I mentioned those 400 acquisitions and all these disparate processes throughout the company.
Yes.
Also, we've just implemented SAP, gone from all these multiple ERPs, so the timings happens to coincide with a point where we can say, okay, I know you're all doing it this way, but now we're only going to do it this way.
This is the new way.
Yeah.
What's interesting as you're talking is, I'm hearing that things are speeding up at Airgas. The system itself is pushing you all faster and faster. Did you agree with Ram's comment about inventory velocity? It really is about everything starting to move faster, including stock.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we started this project and the reason we've done it the way we have by bringing a partner like Acuity, why the company's invested so much money in it, why senior management is so involved, is because we see the market changing so much. We see especially our larger customers having so many requirements around e-commerce that we knew we needed to move fast. Mm-hmm. And we also knew that we needed to build an organization that could move fast, and we didn't have that.
All right, thank you. This might be another no commenter, but you might want to give us maybe a percentage in terms of sales or whatever. Here's the question. How much are you investing on an annual basis to build these capabilities?
A lot.
Okay. Can you give us maybe a percentage of something? If you don't want to, don't worry.
I can't.
All right, no problem. Let's move on. You mentioned...
I can tell you it's so I had a budget before we started this. It's many times what that budget was.
That went on January the 8th?
Yeah.
Right, understood. You mentioned process standardization. How important do you see this, and how did you approach this as a concept?
Yeah, so it's in a company like Airgas with these different processes, it's really hard to put something online, to mirror something online when you don't know what the offline process is that you're trying to mirror. And then when you go and find out you don't have documentation, or it's a changing process, or everybody does it a different way, and everybody you ask gives you a different answer, it becomes really, really hard to say, well, what do I need to put online? I can't accommodate all these things. Who's the single expert on the process? That's one of the challenges we've had, and honestly, it's one of the things we spend a lot of time trying to find subject matter experts within the company. And one of the things we always look at is don't just talk to one person,
right,
and then get them all in a room and say, okay, we're all on the same page, we're changing it to do this.
Okay, so it's about getting the buy-in. Again, it's that constant communication. A couple of questions have come in about the customer themselves. One of them is the intention to lead lower value customers to the self-serve model? In other words, different customer segments. Does it open up new avenues of business for you?
Yeah, sure. We have the typical pyramid of customers with the bigger, more complex ones at the top and the lower ones at the bottom, and we have different approaches for each of those. Certainly, putting low-value transactions online is easier to do with the lower part of the pyramid, and we have a strategy for that. But we also know that e-commerce requirements and procure-to-pay processes are critical for our largest customers. Honestly, it's one of the reasons that spurred this project on. Some of our big customers, giving us a hard time about it not doing what it should do, e-commerce not doing what it should do. So we have different work tracks around each of those segments.
All right, good. Great question coming up now. How are you managing collecting product content and data from manufacturers? How receptive are the manufacturers to dedicating resources to provide this information?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so our product mix, if you're not familiar with it, yeah, we sell the gases, which are our gases, so the product content comes from us. But the other part of the business is MRO-type products, welding and safety products, that we source from many of the folks in the room here, and getting that product content is a real challenge for us. We've worked one-on-one with some of our large manufacturers, but honestly, it doesn't seem like anybody has a real clear-cut, tried-and-true solution. Everybody has content in different places. It all comes to us in different formats.
You have to just handle it however it comes.
Yeah, sometimes for our smaller suppliers, we have to scrape it from their website, or they just send us like a PDF. Things like that. So you have to have a prioritization of what's your most important content to have.
And here's the thing, you could effectively punish those who give you poor content, but in the end, you'd be punishing your own customers and clients.
Yeah. So there's a balance between, hey, if you don't give it to me, you're not getting on the site,
right,
versus I really need it because we got to sell your stuff.
So is there an answer?
Yeah, so we have what we call a brand strategy that indicates who preferred suppliers are. So obviously we put more importance on merchandising those products first.
Right.
And it's to their benefit to give us the content, and the folks we reach out to want to work with us. It's just getting those connections going, take resources.
Maybe for some organizations in the room, it's about incentivizing those manufacturers to alter the way that the content gets delivered.
Yeah.
All right. More questions coming in. Thank you all so much. Tons of them, really. What's the management team's thinking in where within the organization the e-commerce function should sit?
Yeah, so that's another good question. Where should e-commerce sit? And I think the answer varies by organization. It could be in IT, it could be in operations, it could be in customer service, it could be in sales. We happen to be in the sales and marketing organization. But I think the more important question is who's the real leader of the entire organization and how well do they work across all those other departments. That's the key thing you got to identify is the right leader, and you put it with them and maybe not so much focus on which specific functional area should it go.
Have you found that the e-commerce function and the surrounding IT capabilities have risen in importance within the business because of what you're doing?
Oh yeah, very clearly. It's taken on a much greater importance. And so over the years, to get sort of our IT group's attention has been a challenge. But now with this initiative, they're fully engaged in the process and understand the importance.
Fascinating. All right, that's great. Okay, next question may in fact contain a typo. What were the main pain points that you experienced on your old commerce platform? I'm guessing it's pain, but maybe it is about paint. But the question goes on, what were those pain points that prompted you to put the investment into Hybris?
Paint would be harder to answer. So the pain points, I mean, our customers screamed loud and clear what the pain points were. It was no mystery to me. It's slow, it's slow, it's slow, it's slow. And that really had to do a lot with our interactions with our back-end ERP systems. The other one, which is a real big one, is I can't find anything. And the search is horrible. And that goes, for us, and I think in B2B, a lot beyond the search box.
Right.
And it has to do with what products do I expose in my catalog. Because in B2B, you often have, and definitely with us, customers with custom products, with products that flat out cannot be exposed to other customers because of the proprietary nature of them. So we also, again, that entrepreneurial spirit, we have some places at one point we're selling horseshoes to people for some reason. In Alaska, we sold a large oil refinery polar bear repellent. And I had to be on a call to explain why we didn't have polar bear repellent on the website. So
I mean, that should be on the front page.
It's definitely an eye catcher. And so how do you address those concerns with search? And so those were the two big things. So why did we choose the platforms we chose? So we'd stitched together all this other stuff ourselves, and it just wasn't scalable. So we wanted sort of an all-encompassing solution, which is why we chose Hybris. We did add the Endeca search functionality onto that.
Has that helped?
Well, we haven't implemented yet.
Right.
So we haven't gone live yet. But
I will be searching for polar bear repellent the second that's up.
And you know what? You're going to get a message, a friendly message to explain why you can't buy it.
I'll read that while I'm being savaged. Just hold on.
I told you the criticalness of the e-procurement process. Forget about shutting down the plant. Mark got mauled.
So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So you wanted the holistic system. You went with Hybris. And when you looked at other technological or tech offerings out in the marketplace, what was your opinion? What is out there right now for people in the room?
So we looked at sort of all the big names. And so one of the, I guess, concerns we had in the process or challenges we've had, it seemed to us and seems to me that there's still a focus and a B2C type mentality.
Right.
Sort of everybody seems to lead with the sales and the catalog stuff, and there's not enough, to me, understanding or discussion of the functionality around managing complex customer hierarchies, the real procure-to-pay process. We deal with platforms like Ariba and SciQuest. I'm sure many of you do for your large customers. And in the discussions of the customers using those and what capabilities we needed, we didn't see a lot of people being very fluent in responding to our questions to how we're going to support them.
That's interesting. It still feels like we're trailblazers at the beginning of what clearly is incredibly important developments in the business. Steve, lots of people in the room we know are just at the beginning of their own, I guess, journey. Some have begun, some haven't even started. Take us to that kind of blank page moment. There's nothing written down, nothing's prepared, nothing's ready. How would you start?
You really need to, one of the critical things, and at the time I felt we spent too much time on it, months and months. It seemed dragging on where I was thinking very tactically. All we need to do is make it faster and let people find stuff. But you really do need to identify what your strategy is going to be. And in determining the strategy for what your e-commerce platform is, you need to not think about what you want, but first understand what do your real customers really, really want out of this. And then once you define that, you really need to socialize that strategy with everybody in the organization and get buy-in.
Can I pause you for a moment? Because we hear this phrase, it means different things to different people. How do you envisage socializing a message across the business?
Going out and talking to people at all different levels of the company to get their feedback. Does this make sense? Is this going to give you what you want? Because again, the C-suite wants one thing, but if the guys at the branch aren't getting what they want and it doesn't reflect what they think their customers want, you've got a problem. And so once you've got that buy-in and everybody agrees to the strategy, and I have a slide I use, I keep it pinned to my desktop, to my file cabinet, of what that strategy is. You need to continually go back to it through the process, because especially as you start developing the program, people are going to come at you with all sorts of other requests. Why aren't we doing this? I need this. We need to do that. And you need to have some guidelines on, hey, does this comply with my strategy or not? Otherwise, you're going to go off track. You're going to delay your project.
So create that umbrella strategy and always refer back to it.
Yeah.
And can people seek out mini wins so they can gain some traction within the organization?
Yeah, so it's great to have this big project going on, but if we don't put up results, it's a problem. One of the reasons we did our renovation site, which I showed earlier, was to show people that we're going to make changes, get excited about this, more change is coming. So you have to continually show improvement.
Without a doubt. You're very passionate about the business and specifically what you're doing within the business. Do you think there's a career path emerging, perhaps, for the B2B e-commerce professional?
Yeah, I mean, so in 2001 when I started at Airgas, you definitely heard people say, oh, this is a fad, it's going away.
Right.
It's no longer, you can't say it's a fad in a boardroom without getting thrown out now. People would laugh at you, right? So is there a career path? Absolutely. All ships rise with the incoming tide. So there's a lot of opportunity. And as I mentioned, we struggle finding talented people who understand the technology, but then also understand the customers and business case. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely right. That's the target. You've got to straddle that fence right in the middle. Steve, thank you so much for sharing with us great ideas, lots of best practice, and some good guidance as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Max. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
That's great. Thanks a lot.